Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, James.
And good morning, everybody. Hopefully you are all having a good weekend. Thank you for tuning in again. So for the next half an hour or so, Anne and I are going to have another conversation. Hopefully you will find it interesting. And we'll just see where it goes, as always, Anne.
Okay.
Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
Happy to start?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's go.
As always, we can only talk about what springs to mind. These conversations are not planned ahead. So today I was going to FunFit with James, because James has a FunFit class on a Saturday morning. And I asked him to drop me off to get some bread, because we hadn't got any bread. And he stopped me off. I stopped off at the supermarket and went in, and really was only going in for bread. But the temptation with so many goods on the shelves really is a little bit frightening, because you see far more than you go in for. So it started me thinking about when I was a child, because I was a child during the war, and food was rationed. So imagine that if you have 1 egg, 2 ounces of tea and butter, and an ounce of cheese. And that's all you're allowed. You're allowed some sugar, you're allowed certain things without rationing. Bread wasn't rationed.
Wow. Is this per adult?
Per adult.
Per week?
Per week.
Wow. It isn't very much at all, is it?
No.
It really isn't.
No.
Wow.
But the bread was not rationed, because the bread had all added vitamins in to make sure that we were healthy.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
And as with children, we were given milk at school.
Yes.
Because that was necessary, and pure orange juice, because they were still thinking of what we actually needed for growth. So you would think that children from the war would all have rickets and other problems.
Yes.
Because lack of food or vitamins and minerals. But we were very, very healthy. But we ate a lot of bread because there wasn't always the food there.
Yes.
So another interesting thing is that between 1941 and 1948,
yes,
the Ministry of Food classified Heinz beans as essential for health.
Heinz beans?
Heinz baked beans.
As an essential for health?
Yes.
Wow. I have heard that baked beans are a superfood. I have heard that.
You get everything. If you have baked beans on toast, you've got everything you need.
We mentioned that a couple of podcasts ago. I think, and I said that at the time, beans on toast with a glass of fresh orange juice contains all of your essential vitamins, proteins, carbohydrates, everything you would need for a balanced meal. Wow. Simplicity.
Very, very simple. But also fish wasn't rationed. You could get fish. So really, we're in Ireland.
I was speaking to somebody about this the other day. It's a really good point. We are an island, the British Isles, and yet we eat very little fish in comparison to other places in the world that are also islands. And we have some of the best fish, some of the most nutrient-dense, delicious seafood in the world that is exported around the world. And yet very little of it is enjoyed on the British Isles. I find that very interesting. It seems to be counterintuitive.
My parents had a fish and chip shop at one time.
Wow.
And the fish had to be prepared fresh. So they had to skin. I used to have to help skin the fish.
Wow.
In the back. So you got the fish was raw.
Yes.
You had to skin it, you had to mix the batter.
Was it delivered by the fishmonger?
Yes. And proper potatoes, not frozen potatoes like a lot of people use now. Proper potatoes.
Wow.
And then you had to peel them.
Yes.
Had to be peeled. You couldn't get anything that was prepared. And that's again about the 1950s.
Yes. So although it was limited in what you could have and the volume of it, the quality of it was less processed. There was less steps away from its natural source, so it wasn't as processed. I also find it fascinating, and please correct me if I've got the date not quite right, but I think it's 1956.
Yes.
that rationing didn't end in the UK until 1956.
No. And clothes were still rationed.
Wow. It really is different, isn't it? It really is different as a society, as a worldview, as an experience. So different to today.
And imagine yourself,
Yes.
in your age.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a life without having a curry or knowing what a curry was? You go out
No.
to takeaways.
I've grown up where that is part of
Yes.
the British culinary experience.
Yes. Pizzas. I didn't know
Yes,
what pizza
pizzas.
was.
Yeah, so world food has become part of the staple, everything that we're used to. I don't know any different.
No. But again, you're having food that isn't from your own land. And my grandma used to always say,
Right.
you should only eat food that is grown in your own land unless it's got a skin.
That's interesting. Because it wouldn't contain its goodness.
Because we're not used to the spices. That in other countries, they have spices for reasons. So curries are made and chilies are made.
Yes.
Because it's a hot country, and when there were no fridges
Yes.
or freezers,
Yes.
the spices kept them fresh.
That's interesting.
That's the only reason they go in hot countries, because you can't imagine, can you? Why would a hot country have spice and eat something that's hot? You think they'd want something that's cold.
That's a good point. They used to use salt for the same reason. They used to salt meats so that it would last longer.
And smoke.
And smoke,
Smoked
yes.
meat, yes. So
Yeah.
bacon, you get smoky bacon.
Yeah, you do. Well, it makes sense from a logistical point of view and from a nutritional point of view that if food is grown close to where it's consumed,
Yes.
the journey from being planted or reared to being enjoyed upon a plate is a much shorter journey, and therefore there's less of a process involved, so that the goodness is contained, and there's a more of a wholesomeness to it, both in terms of its physical properties but also the whole holistic experience. And I think that it's a good way to go. It's counterintuitive to the globalization of everything that has happened over the last 20, 25, 30 years, where the world's community is really globalized, and there has been a lot of benefits to that, but we have lost what's local and natural to each part of the world. And none of this is about prejudice or right or wrong. I'm not putting it in that context. I enjoy a curry as much as anybody else. I love pizza as much as anybody else. And I enjoy fish and chips as much as anybody else. So it's not about a preference of or a hierarchy of better foods, but it's about the quality and our appreciation of it. Because maybe if we celebrated each other's culture and we enjoyed each other's food less, we'd have a higher appreciation of it. What I mean by that, if everything's easy to access, we become complacent at how wonderful and how enriching and how different and diverse the world is, and food can be, and life can be, and culture can be, and we can celebrate and share that in the best of what it can mean. If we mix it all together in terms of food, and like you said, in the supermarket, everything's available, even things that are out of season. I've always found this fascinating. So British strawberries are up there with the best in the world, like British apples. And yet, in the off-season, they'll import strawberries and apples from other places in the world. Yes. And it seems counterintuitive to me that if we have summer fruits from the natural shore, why don't we enjoy the winter root vegetables or other things that are natural to the season? I'm not saying that other countries don't grow interesting fruits. Of course they do. But
you enjoy them when you go to those countries.
Yes.
That is the thing. My grandma used to say that you should only eat what is in season, because in winter you have root vegetables, so you have your stews,
yes,
your potatoes,
yes,
and your meat, and that's because you need the warmth. We need the warmth in this country.
Yes.
You should never eat salad. This is her. I'm not saying you should.
So your stews and your dumplings.
Yes, and your meat and potato pies.
Yes.
Those are your winter warmers.
British delicious stodge. Yeah. But full of nutritional goodness.
But she would say you never ever eat salad in winter.
Wow,
and
that's
now
interesting.
salad is in all the shops. In fact, I bought one today. So I do the same.
So you haven't listened to your grandmother?
No. So, so she said you don't eat salad because you have salad in winter.
Yes.
Because you need water, and salad is only water.
Ah, that's interesting.
gives
So
you the
salad
extra water.
in summer,
In
for
summer,
hydration.
it's
Well,
for
that makes sense,
hydration,
doesn't it? It does make sense.
Yes, it does. And if you get anything from abroad, it should, like I said before, it should only be in a skin. So bananas were all right.
So this generational wisdom, we've lost a lot of that, because I remember hearing about certain things like that. So eat what's local to the region.
Yes.
And I always remember people telling me about that when you go and explore and enjoy other parts of the world and other people's land and cultures. And if you eat their culinary, that's a bit of a tongue twister, culinary delicacies, what they enjoy that's local to their land, you have a real appreciation, because you get a sense of their land, their soul, or our soul in terms of the whole of humanity, but that particular region. And it connects you to something that's in the heart and soul of those people. And then you have that bond, and maybe I'm romanticising it, but it feels like that. Like when somebody may come to these shores and they would want to try roast beef or fish and chips, like you said, meat and potato pie. British simple food, really, that often is mocked by the world, but can be absolutely delicious and connects to the soul and the story of the people. To the fishmongers, the fish and chip shops, to the farmers, and to the people that share and make the food. It connects us all in a story of life and culture and
so it's not exciting,
and celebration.
Is it?
No.
Well, when you go abroad now, it's not exciting anymore. When I first started going abroad, because I was in my late 20s before I ever went abroad.
Yes.
I'd never been on a plane. And when I went abroad, it was so exciting to see the food that they were eating, because it hadn't crossed over when I first started going abroad.
Yes.
You went to another country and you experienced their food.
So it was like going to another world.
It was another world.
Yes.
Everything about it was another world.
Yes.
The dress, the shops.
Yes.
Now, if I flew you in a plane blindfolded and dropped you in another country in the centre of a town, you'd still have your same
McDonald's, KFC. Yes.
And that's sad in a way, isn't it?
It is sad. There was the story, which I think is still the case, of a McDonald's restaurant opening up near the pyramids in Egypt.
It's actually, you can see it from the pyramids. You look across the sand and the McDonald's is there. Yes.
And I have nothing, in any particular way against pyramids
it's
or
just
McDonald's. But somehow it feels like, I don't quite know what the apt word would be, but there is a transactional, material, soulless vacuum that is created. I don't quite know what the coin of phrase would be. So I do think it's an interesting point of reflection that we have so much choice of food, and yet, like you've just said, it's so similar in lots of ways wherever you go.
Yes.
We have quality of food that I say is on the decline.
Yes.
And we have a quantity of food which is ever increasing. So buy one, get one free, 3 for 2. Get this card, club card, that card, buy this, buy that. So we can buy ever more excessive food, but how much of that food is quality food? Both in terms of nutrient dense, full of goodness, vitamins, minerals, essential life force that keeps the human vessel going and keeps everything moving and functioning to the highest capacity. And how much of it is made in bulk for mass production, highly produced, highly processed.
I'd say the majority
and
of
bought,
it at this time.
And bought at a cheaper price. And people recognise that, but the quality's less. One of the other old sayings, I'm sure you remember it, never get it wrong, correct me, is for breakfast, eat like a king. For lunch, eat like a prince. And for dinner, eat like a pauper. I think that's right. So the idea being to eat more in the morning, eat to sustain yourself during the day, and have a lighter meal in the evening. And we seem to have flipped it round where most people, maybe not most people, but lots of people now skip breakfast or don't really have a nutrient-dense breakfast. They might have a highly processed breakfast cereal or something like that. And then they have a fast lunch, and then they eat in the evening, but they eat very, very late. So they're eating a lot of food late, and their digestive system and their body's slowing down. So we've turned the day completely on its head. And the wisdom, my understanding is, the wisdom of it would be, and I would say relatively true, that if you're up and active, you fuel yourself in the morning with calories and what you need for the day, and you will work it off and burn it off throughout the day, and your digestive system, like a furnace, is firing throughout the day. And then in the evening, as you're slowing down, you're not overloading your digestive system, so that you are balancing yourself with what you eat, when you eat, throughout the day. I'm not saying that's the only way to do things, and I'm not saying that's completely right, but I do remember people talking to me about that, like my grandparents whilst I was younger.
Yes.
That was generally a wise way of looking at it.
Well, what used to happen is, because obviously after the war, when my dad came back from war and he went back to engineering, he was an engineer, he didn't have to sign up for the war.
Yes.
And he was a turner in English steel. But before he went to work, which would be very early he would be going to work, before he went to work, he would have a bacon and egg.
Yes.
He would have a breakfast, a proper breakfast.
Yes.
And then he would have a Billy Cann.
A Billy Cann?
A Billy Cann.
Okay, what's a Billy Cann?
And a Billy Cann is, it's a metal, it was a metal can, because they didn't do stainless steel then.
Okay.
And in the bottom of it, he would twist, he would put tea into newspaper, pieces of newspaper. You see, these people don't even realise that there was no such thing as the plastic bags or things we've got now that people are putting in.
Yes.
So you used to put a square of newspaper,
Yes.
put 2 teaspoons of tea, proper tea in
Yes.
it, twist it,
Yes.
another one with two spoonfuls of sugar,
Yes.
and then he would take that with him and his sandwiches, and they would go, he'd have the sandwiches in paper, grease paper,
Yes.
at the side, take the Billy Cann, and that's what he made his tea in. You didn't get tea from, like you do now if you go out to work and there's a kettle. So he would have hot water in the top of the Billy Cann, and then when he wanted his tea, he'd put the first little bit of tea
Yes.
into it to brew it, and his sugar and his milk. The milk was already in the water.
Wow.
So it was never boiling.
Wow.
And that's what he used to take with him. And then when he came home at night, he would have whatever had been prepared for him at night. But that's after work, and they're working all day. And a day then was starting at 7:30. And 2 nights a week, he worked till 7:30.
Wow.
Overtime. But overtime, he worked overtime 2 nights a week till 7:30. And they could do Saturday morning as overtime.
Yes.
And they weren't taxed on overtime,
That's interesting.
which I find very interesting. The other thing they used to do in the factories
Yes.
was piecework.
Okay.
So you were paid your wage, but if you did over the amount of work that you produced more products
Yes.
than you were meant to in a day, you
Yes.
got paid for those products extra.
Oh, wow.
Incentives in a way, aren't there? Do we have any incentives today to allow people to work? Or is anybody even producing anything now?
We have shifted. I'm not an expert, but the United Kingdom has shifted from being an industrial nation,
Yes.
producing and manufacturing a lot of produce for both home and abroad, to being predominantly goods and services. So most people work in a form of goods and services. So they don't produce or manufacture any physical things. The British industry still exists, but it's vastly reduced in comparison to the time that you're talking about. So British manufacturing is becoming less and less and less all the time. So that's interesting as well, because we're not actually producing tangible things,
No, that's what I'm saying. We're
material
not.
things, which is interesting because people...
So we're losing trade.
Absolutely.
Trades.
We're losing trades, we're losing skills, and are we losing meaning? And are we losing purpose? Are we losing a connection to the physical world around us because we're not engaging physically with it?
Especially working from home.
Yes, well, that's another point, isn't it? That people are now working from home. So are we losing connection and meaning to each other because we're not even sharing a space? And the space that we are sharing is virtual.
Yes.
So it's based around an interface of technology, and here we are again back onto that central topic, but essentially connecting people through technology rather than connecting people through presence. as in people present, sharing, like you and I are sharing a physical presence. We're not doing this via Zoom or anything like that. However, you all listening this morning or whenever it is that you're listening are sharing a space with us in a meta way, in a sense. Anne and I are physically together, but we are all together listening and talking and sharing the space together in a different way.
There's always been that though, hasn't it?
Because with the radio, yes.
So that's not, it's what we're doing now is not new in actual fact.
No, it's not, is it? In
It's
terms
old.
of the audio experience, the immersive audio experience, I do find there's something tremendously intimate and beautiful about radio, and hopefully about this podcast and about other podcasts as well, that your mind is freer because you can absorb and consume the words, but you can conjure the images and you can move around. There's something very personal and intimate about it, something raw and vulnerable and sensitive and interesting and intriguing. I hope that that's what people are finding. At least if they're still listening this morning, they found something of interest. So we've lost a lot of feel, haven't we? And that's a common theme that you and I discuss, and we've discussed during our podcast together. And I would like people to get back to conscience. I'd like people to get back to feel. I'd like people to get back to the simplicity of life that brings forth a natural gratitude, that brings a weight of meaning and a weight of purpose to lives. And I feel that a lot of the issues with mental health, with physical health, with a lack of in so many areas, will not be completely remedied, but certainly will be helped. And a lot of what is there will dissipate, will be eased by bringing ourselves back to each other, that we are better together. We are a cooperative, communal species. We live together, we love together, and we can thrive together. That doesn't mean we all have to be in each other's pockets, but we share this earth, we share this land, we share this space together, and we are better together.
I was mentioning last week, when we were talking about schools, and I was mentioning that I would like them to go back to pen and paper.
Yes.
And a client came to me this week, and it's funny, isn't it, how something materialises after you've been talking about something. And after last week's Remembrance Sunday, one of my clients came to me, and she'd been listening to the podcast, and she brought me a file, a massive file from that her granddad had written from his experiences in the war in Burma.
Wow.
Which was it was a very, very difficult war in Burma, and it's got everything in it, from letters from his children, his wife's love letters, Christmas cards, but also the actual fighting and the experiences. And he's talking about, and it's horrendous, because he's talking about knives and how he himself has had to kill people during the war. And he has that horror with him.
Yes.
He had it with him all his life, that he'd had to do that. And I think that's, in a way, is being glassed over as well, is that people don't seem to have that deep consciousness of something's happened anymore. Things that happen that are not very nice become the norm. People
have become apathetic.
Yes. So it's very interesting. And then I had somebody else come again this same week after we'd been doing this.
Yes.
And this person said to me, I've been clearing out, and a man, not a lady saying this, it was a man.
Yes.
And he said, we've been clearing out drawers, cleaning drawers today. He said, and I found in a box then, I found all the letters I sent to my wife.
Oh.
He said, and I've been reading the love letters. He said, and I can't believe, and this man's in his 80s.
Yes.
And he said, and I can't believe I'm looking at them, because remember in 80 years ago, people weren't tactile. And he said, I'm starting the letters with my darling.
Oh.
And I thought, isn't it beautiful to be able to keep that all your life and to be able to go back and find it? We're not going to be able to do that today with phones.
I know.
So when they die, the phone will go. The photographs will go.
It doesn't have the same romance, the same feel, the same soul in a text message and email. I remember, it's not to the same extent you're talking about, but whether it be birthday, Christmas, or a thank you of any kind, we'd write a thank you letter. My parents would encourage me, and I'm so glad that they did. But I don't do that anymore. No. And I think that's just my own apathy, my own laziness, my own conditioning into, whatever this modern progressive world is. But we don't, or we rarely do, and I know some people listening still do this, and I suppose I'm reminding myself to have a think on whether I'd like to do it again. But that personal touch, particularly when it's a moment of meaning.
Yes.
And we've become crude, we've become ungrateful, not you and I necessarily or anybody listening, but as a society we've become transactional. We aren't even material, I'd say.
No.
A material society would value material things.
Yeah.
So although everybody would be self-absorbed and consumed by more and more things,
Yes.
if we really were material in the literal sense, we would look after our equipment, we would look after our material things, because they would be our prized possessions.
Yes.
But people don't even look after.
It's a throwaway society.
It is. It is a throwaway society. It's fast and low quality, and maybe we're looking at a future that is not necessarily in the version that's being put forward sustainable in that way.
No.
We're looking for something that is soulful, meaningful, and that's treasured.
Yes.
We don't have treasures anymore. The letters you're talking about, the file that your client shared with you, is a treasure.
Yes.
The stories that you're sharing about your father, about your mother, are treasures. These are treasures. These are human stories, human treasures. The experiences that we have to share, the physical totems, the moments of significance that are captured in certain mediums, photography, letters,
I would
are
like...
so precious.
Yes.
And meaningful.
I would like, before we finish,
Yes.
that everybody who is listening to us would to just give a thought to, it may be a neighbour, it may be a family member, mothers, fathers, grandmothers, who are living on their own.
Yes.
To send somebody a letter. Wouldn't
Wow.
it be beautiful for the people that hear us today to write a letter? And even they don't need to go through the post. I know it's expensive, but go and post a letter through somebody's door.
Yes.
And it will be unbelievable how much pleasure it will give that person just talking as we're talking now in a letter. It doesn't have to be flowery. It can be just saying what you've done, or to show your appreciation for the person. They won't burn that letter. They won't throw that letter away. They'll keep going back to it and reading it.
Yes.
And that's just would give somebody. And if we could do that even once a week for somebody.
Yes. If we can get back to putting our human signature, and I would even stretch it to a divine signature, a meaningful signature on that which we touch. We spoke about food earlier.
Yes.
When we're cultivating, creating, cooking food, remember to bring our mind, our soul, our beingness into the food.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be in an esoteric, pretentious way.
No.
Just with thought, genuine, being thoughtful.
Just loving cooking it for somebody
Even
is enough.
even
Or
a
the
sandwich,
Yeah.
even a sandwich. It's
Don't throw it together.
yeah. Don't be mindless, and we don't have to be pedantic either. As in,
No.
it is what it is. We don't want to overanalyze everything either.
No.
But I do think, absolutely no, if I'm honest, that the ever-encroachment of technology is taking humanity away from itself. It's taking humanity away from soul.
Yes.
And we have the opportunity to get back to soul, to get back to that which is the true treasure, which is us, which is humanity.